Welcome to the RPG Podcast.
And we are live.
Oh, God, Pat!
Presented by Sheep. A Time Wheel production.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. And I'm back with Dave Schmo, the Schmo Zone host. He's the host of that podcast, and the Schmo and the Pro on YouTube. He's blowing up all over the internet, and he's here with us today, and we're very excited to have him. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Thanks for having me. And I know it's kind of twisted for the introduction with Schmo, Dave, or whatever. I keep them separate, and you did a good job putting that together.
I try. I've been a big fan of yours ever since I say you burst out onto the scene and on the UFC. You are one of the few press pass holders that are allowed to go to like all of these crazy events like Abu Dhabi and wherever the UFC are holding events. How does it feel to be a part of that group, and what is that like?
You know, it definitely feels special. It's something I don't take for granted. I really appreciate what the UFC's been able to do during this pandemic and what Dana White's been able to do. Instead of just crawling up in a ball and putting things on hold, he's kept this machine churning and going forward. And very early on, I let it be known to Dana. I messaged him. I said, Dana, like, I don't know where the world's headed, but I support what you're doing. Like, I want to be a part of this. I let him know from the early on when there were shutdowns and everything. I'm still here. I still want to cover the sport. I still want to interview these fighters. And I think he really appreciated that. Instead of being one of those media members that attacked the UFC for the domain, keep the wheels turning and moving forward, I supported what he was doing. I understood, that there's both sides to this, right? Because if you turn this off, you're turning off so much hope that people that turn to sports to escape their everyday realities, you're turning off the hope for these fighters that literally are living from fight to fight, paycheck to paycheck, and need the support. He's got thousands of employees that are riding on his shoulders, and I just thought that was far more important and significant than the actual science and health data that was saying otherwise. So I think I was on the right side of this. I'm glad I was on the side of this. I don't take it for granted. And I love interviewing these special athletes every day.
Yeah, I see you all over. Every day I've opened my Instagram, you're interviewing someone new, some major star, and that must be exciting for you. It's exciting for me to get an interview like you, and I get to interview fighters sometimes too now, and like Jason Knight I just interviewed, and James Krause. That was awesome. And now I'm interviewing you, but you're interviewing like Izzy and Bully, Bilal, and like everyone. It was just Sean O'Malley. Did you interview McGregor? I don't even know, but pretty much everyone.
Pretty much McGregor's the one guy I haven't had the opportunity to interview. I've asked him questions at press conferences, but I haven't been able to have a one-on-one time with him yet. In due time, it will happen. He's one of the few on the bucket list that I've yet to check off.
Yeah, you'll get him. You're just because you're in the belly of the beast. I've said it before, and that's a unique position, I feel, to just have access to all these guys and get that energy of you. Yeah, you live in Vegas, correct? Mm-hmm. And correct. A lot of those guys live there. So do you just hang out? Do you hang out with them at all?
Yeah, well, I try to not pick favorites. I've developed relationships with these fighters over the years, and we're all here. Like, I don't care who wins or loses the fight. I just want to see something exciting, and I just hope they get out relatively unscathed. No permanent damage or things that are going to jeopardize the longevity of their career. Obviously, it's fighting. Shit happens. Who knows? But I do have good relationships. It seems like during this pandemic, a lot more fighters have been moving down to Vegas. A lot of guys have been utilizing the UFC Performance Institute, which is right next to UFC conveniently, or part of the UFC headquarters conveniently, rather. And it's such a valuable resource. Why wouldn't more fighters take advantage? So throughout this pandemic, and even before it, but more so now than ever, you get a lot of guys and gals that are fighters traveling in and out to Vegas, utilizing the Performance Institute, utilizing that beautiful facility. Shout out to Heather Linden. I know a lot of the fighters shout her out. She's a great physical therapist for her team. They do a great job working on these fighters. So I do spend some time with fighters. It's more random and out of the moment or schmoment than anything else.
So do you get to utilize the PMI the Performance Institute?
Yeah, the PI. Before the pandemic, I've used it a few times. Actually, because I shot a couple of the Schmoverse the Pro pieces of content, and I know like I've used the sauna with Diego Sanchez. I did the meditation piece. That's a YouTube video up there. Henry Cejudo, I have a good relationship with him. When he was fighting, he's invited me there as a guest to, kind of do some recovery there. But I really haven't used it since the pandemic hit, so it's been a couple of years.
But you do train. You're a bit of a practitioner of BJJ. Is that true?
I have some experience with it. I haven't been as consistent with it lately just because of my work schedule, but I'm familiar with it. I would be lying if I wasn't.
Yeah, me too, to an extent, but I'm very similar to your scenario. I just don't make or take the time to get on the mat. I've been training in boxing, which is pretty fun, but still it's pretty few and far between.
100%. I guess I'll say this here. I haven't really said this much too. I kind of keep it, I keep it relatively low key what I can and can't do in the case I ever take some sort of celebrity fight with the right dance partner, whether it be boxing or whether it be MMA, some sort of charity celebrity event. I'm still open to that for the right partner. So I kind of keep it under wraps. And plus, in Vegas, I don't want to pick favorites with coaches. I don't want to pick Syndicate over Extreme Couture, Extreme Couture over Syndicate, or any like that, because I really don't have favorites. I like all the coaches and I like all the athletes, so I don't want to train with one over the other and pick sides. So I like to keep everything kind of low key.
As a journalist, I know you challenged Ariel Helwani to a game of one-on-one for charity, and he just didn't even respond, right?
Oh, he responded.
Oh, did he?
But he didn't respond in the best of ways. But yes, I did challenge him to anything athletic. It started with charity grappling, then it went to charity basketball, and then it went to charity anything. And raised money, $50,000 prize pool. Winner goes to the charity. Winnings go to the charity of the winner's choosing. And I thought he was the right dance partner. I don't see the necessity of it now that he's no longer with ESPN. But I'm open to it. He might not be the only right dance partner, but at the time I called him out, he was the perfect dance partner. But if there's something else that arises, I'm open to it.
Yeah, he's probably, I would say, the biggest name in MMA journalism. And so I would feel like you're calling out the champ or whatever to get some of that limelight to, and maybe claim your rightful seat as the champ over,
Yeah, well, I think it comes in a few different molds. So I'm most popular as an interviewer in MMA, and I'm happy with that. No problems with that. I never saw that coming. When I first started interviewing athletes, it was the NFL and the NBA, and I'm a huge sports fan, and I never got into this trying to be an MMA personality. I don't consider myself an MMA personality. I consider myself a sports personality. I cover a lot of boxing. I continue to cover a lot of boxing. I have a lot of boxing events coming up, and with the Raiders in town and the NFL season kind of opening back up, I'll do some more Raiders content, NFL content. But I don't want to be kind of just in this bucket list of MMA and UFC in particular, even though I love it and it'll probably be my number one, and I'm okay with that. But I consider myself more of a sports personality than just an MMA personality.
Yeah, you're not limited strictly to MMA. You interviewed Manny Pacquiao recently. That's a pretty big interview. Do you get nervous at stuff like that?
When I was a kid, I used to get really nervous for public speaking, and I turned kind of like my biggest fear into my greatest asset in my adult life. we're all human beings. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We all put our underwear on one leg at a time, as you know. And I don't. If I was to get nervous for one athlete, I would say that I'm going to be interviewing. It's my childhood hero, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time. I think I would get a little nervous for that. But whether I'm interviewing Manny Pacquiao, I've interviewed him a few times now, or a Deontay Wilder, or a Tyson Fury. If Khabib comes in and crashes an interview, I'm going to be in character in myself. But Michael Jordan, it might be a little different.
Yeah, I watched The Last Dance 2 times because that was so good.
Times. Yeah.
Yeah. Inspirational. And he was, just bigger than human or more than human. And still to this day holds that air of greatness. He never, to me, did anything to ruin his reputation. And he just gets to hold that position for eternity.
It's a beautiful thing that social media wasn't around when he was in his heyday. I'll say that.
I'm sure. Yeah, we got to be careful these days. You don't want to rub people the wrong way by stating political opinions that are unpopular or whatever. But but it happens, and then sometimes we leave it in, sometimes we don't. I imagine you don't get too much into that.
You know what? I hate politics. I really do. I see corruption on both sides. For me, I love sports, and sports is people's escape from the everyday reality. I could not believe, the one thing that shocked me the most during this pandemic is I thought sports would be bulletproof in the sense of, this is people's escape. I don't think sports, and what we learned through this pandemic, nothing, including sports, can escape politics. And I avoid politics like the plague. I'm here to entertain and to tell these athletes stories and to use my comedic approach and use my shtick. I can't stand politics. But when it comes to politics, all I'll say is they have to group people on two sides, a left and a right, and two different things. Well, guess what? No one fits that mold.
Exactly.
No one completely, I take parts of both sides.
Same.
And no one wants to put that into that middle or to represent that. And because of that, we will never have a complete side. And you marginalize people, you put them here and there. And so long story short, I just completely avoid it because I just know it's not relatable. It's not realistic. And the people that are running it at the top are completely in it for themselves.
Thank you. That's all. That's well put, because they're all in it for themselves. We are all kind of in life for ourselves. They're humans too, and so we're all trying to take care of the future generations or whatever, ourselves and our immediate families. So sometimes that comes at the expense of others when given the opportunity. Because we all think we're saints, but then if you were in that position, who knows what you would do? But to say one side is better than the other, that's where I get a little, my feathers ruffled as well. It's they're all the same. We're all humans. And so sports is a great escape. And I'm so happy that Dana was able to push forward with the UFC like he did and put all of the other sports behind the UFC in the run for, longevity. Or I feel like they are positioned very well, and a lot of these other sports where they were the top dog, like football and NBA, maybe not so much because they did get too political. Anyways, I love what he's doing. And he lets the fighters speak their minds and stuff. I like that shit. Let them say what they're gonna say, unless it's hurting someone. I'm not about that, but he lets them say what they want to say, and I appreciate that. You've been able to speak with him quite a few times. How's that?
Yeah, no, I think he's super down to earth. He's a realistic guy, and what you just said, to your point, when you allow people to speak their minds and you're not censoring anybody, that's the ultimate form of equality. That's just opening up the floodgates to just putting yourself out of the situation. Like the NFL and the NBA, yes, they're the most popular sports in this country, but now they have to backtrack because they chose political sides. I found it fascinating that during the NBA bubble that they had BLM on the backcourt, on the hardwood, and then literally a few months later, because of the money, losing sponsors, and the backlash you saw for this upcoming season that happened a few months later, BLM was off the court. Literally, where did that movement go? It just disappeared. Political reasons, with China and everything. So, I mean, I'm not afraid to call out the hypocrisy. In terms of what Dana, I just like his approach. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if what your beliefs are. He doesn't care what your ethnicity is, what your gender, or like if you're gay, if you're straight. It doesn't matter to him. It's, can you fight? It's that's what it comes down to. It's, can you fight? And the respect I have too, look, I know this is an entertainment and this is a business. But if you look at the history of combat sports and you look at how boxing's structured, there are so many different mouths to feed and pieces to the pie. There's the WBC, the WBO, the IBF. There's so many different belts and organizations. The best fighters fight the best fighters in the UFC. Granted, there's contract negotiations and some things don't work out. Like, obviously, there's situations where you could have an interim heavyweight champion. But ultimately, the best fighters fight the best fighters, and that's why I have so much respect for Dana. And he doesn't give a shit. Sorry if I'm not allowed.
It's okay.
He doesn't care what your political belief is, even if it's different than his. It's, can you fight? That's what I respect.
I respect that too. The ultimate equality. So why did they put Gagne versus Lewis? Like, why Cyril Gane, whatever, instead of Ngannou? Why didn't Ngannou fight?
Well, I think there's a few different reasons for this. I think what a lot of it boils down to is kind of a miscommunication between Ngannou's camp and the UFC. I think there was an expectation that he would be ready sooner than that, and from the UFC side. And on Francis Ngannou's side, it's, look, we want to fight. We're going to be ready to fight, but it's not August. It's going to be September. I think Francis and his team had it set that they'd be fighting in that September 25th card, which is here in Vegas. The UFC, they had Amanda Nunes title fight against Juliana Pena, and I know they wanted another title fight in Houston, and Derek Lewis is from Houston. I think they really had that circled for Francis. Francis had some travel plans. Francis had life plans, and they were pretty much just from a timing standpoint a month apart. I know it seems pretty odd too, because he only had the belt for 3 months, 4 months, and they created an interim. I can see both sides of this story. It is very, very unique and very, very different. From a business side, I completely understand why they had to have the interim heavyweight title fight. It makes a lot of sense business-wise.
It does. Yeah.
But I think if we look at the present and where we're at right now, this fine Tuesday morning, and it's August 10th when we're recording this podcast, I think it's working out quite well with the storylines that you have Cyril Gane, who I think has proven himself now with looking at his competition, undefeated, his background, former training partners with Francis Ngannou, the storylines there. Maybe they open up the first card in France with MMA, depending on the world situation. But like Dana said this in the post-fight press conference, and it's I kind of like this jab, and I thought it was kind of unique. He's like, Vince, as in Vince McMahon, could not have scripted a better storyline than how this is shaped out to be. And I kind of agree with that. And if you're Derek Lewis, look, you got to fight for the heavyweight title in front of your hometown fans. That's what he would have done too. Had he won the fight, he would have had a double type situation of payday in terms of belts on the line, pay-per-view points. So the way it worked out is the way it worked out. It kind of sucks. It's kind of unfortunate, but like, it's not like they stripped Francis Ngannou.
No,
it's not like they stripped him. He's still the heavyweight champion of the world.
Well, not for long, some might say. This podcast is brought to you by OhanaKavaBar.com. Now, Ohana means family, but what is Kava? Kava is a root from the South Pacific. It makes you calm and happy. Just go to OhanaKavaBar.com. Choose your favorite brew. They have many to choose from, with more on the way. And I personally like the tincture. It tastes good. It gets you quick. and you're calm and relaxed in a moment. It cools and calms the nerves, and I think you'll like it. Let them know we sent you. Support this podcast by supporting our sponsors and support this company. So go to ohanakababar.com, use promo code Sheath. You're going to love it. Doesn't taste that great, but chase it with a nice pineapple. You will not be disappointed. Trust me on that. ohanakababar.com. Ohana's family. Use promo code Sheath. You're welcome. Last but not least, sheathunderwear.com. The greatest underwear on the planet. The underwear of legends. The underwear that keeps your balls from sticking to your legs. That's right. This is the best underwear because it keeps your boys cool. Check out sheathunderwear.com. Back to the show. As Ciryl Gane was looking quite like frisky. He was bouncing around side to side, front and back, really gave Derek Lewis, who beat Ngannou, kind of, by decision.
Most boring fight, heavyweight fight like that, but they would both agree. But yeah, no, hey, Derek Lewis has beaten Francis Ngannou. That still holds true.
Yeah, and Ciryl was quite impressive. I was like, oh shit. I wasn't sure with all the guys he beat before, even though they were good. But when he beat Lewis pretty handily, I mean, finished him. And Derek Lewis is the Black Beast. He doesn't really get finished very often. I think maybe DC got him, but I love this sport. I do love this sport. I was really happy for Tecia Torres. You know, we used to sponsor her, and she's here from Colorado Springs, and we stay cool and work together from time to time. And she's, you know, these fighters go from like ups and downs in their careers, and it's all mental, right? And so she seems to be on a very like positive mental attitude about her moving forward in her career. Because it seems like sometimes these fighters, the journeyman types that have been around for a while, they're just like they just come and fight and get their paycheck a little bit.
Yeah, you know, it depends. The sport's filled with fighters at very different stages of their careers too. You know, some people start later and have different ambitions too. Like, it's so crazy because if you think about it, like Randy Couture, I think recently, you know, we both are probably big fans of the Joe Rogan podcast, and I think he was talking to Chad Mendes about how Randy Couture started his UFC career when he was like turning 34 years of age, and like for 10 years up until he was 44, you know, he became the light heavyweight champion and the heavyweight champion of the world in such later stages of his career. And there's some people that get into the sport just looking to fight because they're good at it and they want the money. There's some people that get into the sport, they do it for sport because they want to be a world champion. You know, it's very, very different, and you get people on all different levels at the highest level in terms of mindset, and it's a very unique thing. And what you just said about Tecia, you're right. I think she was on a 3 or 4 fight losing streak, and then she flipped the switch, and now she's on like a 3 fight win streak or something like that. And she has fought the who's who, and now, if now than ever, at this chapter of her career, this is her resurgence to going back to contend for that title belt, which has always been a goal of hers.
And Angela Overkill Hill was like, she was on a tear, and I didn't see that coming, but she's now lost 2 in a row to Karate Hottie and Tecia. And so that's crazy how the sport, like they were putting her up on not a pedestal, but you know, she's going into the you know, the ESPN desk analyzing the fights, and I don't know how or they pick people to do that, you know. How does that work?
Yeah, I think there's like an audition process. Like everybody's ultimate goal, I think the number one slated spot is like when you're cage side, broadcast side, like where Anik is, where Rogan, where Bisping is broken into, Paul Felder, DC, Dominic Cruz. Those guys are cage side. They're at the broadcast. Well, to get to that point, you know, you got to audition. They put people at the desk. You know, I say upstairs because in the Apex, that whole production area is upstairs, where they kind of rotate people in there. You know, Bully B, Bilal Muhammad, he's getting some reps in now. Michael Chandler, who I recently just interviewed, he was in Houston Actually, he was doing the weigh-in show. They do a weigh-in show for the pay-per-views with like DC. I think is a guy from the football world, Dan Hellie. He's the host there. He comes from like the NFL Network. Laura Sanko, she does that, and Chandler was their guest for that too. So they put them on the weigh-in show. They put them in the broadcast up there. I know Chiesa, I've seen Walt Harris, Angela Overkill. She was there, but they kind of just feel them out up in those roles before they would bring them, down there cage side.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that worked. You probably get the most, I would think, the most animated types of characters, like Bisping is, just a talker, and Felder, Cruz for sure, DC. So, and I guess you put them through the trials and see if they pass. And I imagine winning plays a part in, whether or not they stay on or something. I'm not sure if that's true, but I imagine it's a factor.
Oh, for sure. I mean, their credibility is huge. Like, yeah. I just, when you have Dominic Cruz, arguably the greatest, if not the greatest bantamweight of all time, DC, one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time right there, Bisping, his trials and tribulations, former champion, speaks for itself, Hall of Famer. And then Paul Felder, he's a top 10 lightweight during his heyday, but what really separates him too is he's not only is he a good-looking guy, they're all good-looking guys. Let me just say that right off the bat, and everything too. But he's really charismatic on the mic, and he breaks it down extremely well. And with being a top 10 lightweight at his best, he has the credentials. He checks off enough of the boxes where it fits the mold really well. So. And chemistry, I think, is huge too.
Yeah.
Knowing when to speak and how to speak, because they have earpieces in and they got producers speaking their ears to do certain things. It's they really put them through the ringer to really test to see if they can do it. And I think those guys have proven over time that they are where they are because of what they've been able to do with it.
Yeah, and Felder's such a fucking badass. Like, every fight he's ever lost, I think, was like by a chin hair or something. Split decision or whatever, always a battle.
I'll never forget in Phoenix when he beat James Vick. It was the first ESPN card. I think it was like 2018 or beginning of 2019 or whatever it was. And he beat James Vick, and he beat him with a punctured lung. He was fighting the last round with a punctured lung. And the no quit, I was cage side for that. The way the dog in him, and even the war he had with Dan Hooker too.
Oh my God!
I mean, the wars this guy has, the entertainment value, it's always been there as a fighter, and I think it's translated for him, just like Bisping. It's translated to him on the broadcast, and I think as a huge fan of the sport and being as close as I am to the sport, that's something I don't take for granted, and I respect and appreciate the most for a guy like Paul Felder.
Yeah, he's very respectable, and I think I don't know, I think he retired again, but I'm not sure.
Retired. Yeah, he's retired. He's a triathlete now, which is something I respect too. He's competing in half Ironman, 70.3s, and he's going to be doing full Ironmans, I know too. So he's a beast.
He is a beast. I'm gonna get him on here one day.
100%.
It's cool because I get to talk to guys like you, and a lot of, you mentioned Rogan a minute ago, and we are both big fans, as a lot of the people we sponsor have like gone through his show, and that's how I found out about him in a lot of cases. And him having stepped away from YouTube and stepping more away from the UFC is allowing a lot of new talent to fill that vacuum. And I love him for that. I'm like, it's like he's giving all these other people opportunities, maybe not even, on purpose, but allowing for that space to be filled. And he still comes in from time to time or whatever. But I just think that that's really, a lot of people stick around maybe too long, outstay their welcome, or, you got these, no offense, whatever, these boxing dudes are like 90, and I'm like, yo, take it easy, retire, let a new guy do his thing.
I 100% agree with you. And as the schmo, I've been trying to get in there as new blood, break the mold of the traditional broadcast and with the personality and the shtick as the schmo. And I totally agree with you. And quickly backtracking to what you said with Rogan, he doesn't do the international pay-per-views. He's cage side. He covers all the domestic pay-per-views. Ironically, this one in Houston this past week when we were there, this was the first time, I have no idea how long it's been since Rogan has missed a domestic pay-per-view, and that's why Dominic Cruz filled in and stepped in for him in that situation. But I have so much respect for Rogan because he does pay it forward and pass it through the next generations, and he's not there trying to be the domineering voice. He knows his place. He's a huge fan of the sport, and I respect him for everything like that. And to your point, Ben, what you just said with boxing, so many dinosaurs, so many fossils, and it's like this way in other sports too. But it's like, how are you going to attract the younger generations, the mobile audiences, the 18 to 24-year-olds to come to the sport when you have a guy fully gray, 67 years old, not shouting out any names, that cannot relate to anybody on the broadcast, that has been doing it the same exact way for decade after decade after decade, doesn't even care to know this modern generation and what the modern fan wants, and you expect to attract that new audience? Get out of here. It's laziness.
Yeah, it's time to turn the page in your life and right off into the sunset. But people, like even fighters, stay on too long, and maybe it's the glory, the limelight, the attention, the money helps, but there's ways to transition. Like so many people who get their start in the UFC, or now they're doing podcasts, now they have YouTube channels or whatever, and I wasn't loving the Paul brothers, but then I kind of started loving them just because it gives more attention to boxing and MMA, and it just mixes it up a little bit, more.
Yeah, I totally respect what the Paul brothers built. Nothing was given to them. They earned this. They earned their audience, and they're so good at building something and maintaining it and building an entertainment value. Regardless if they have the right credentials in fighting or not, they're adding entertainment to this, and they're speaking up on stuff. And regardless if you find it genuine or not, Jake Paul is bringing awareness to fighter pay, which is obviously a big thing. And when it comes to the UFC and MMA, it's a big touchy subject. I mean, even actually, she's coming on our podcast for this next episode. We're going to have Cheyenne Bays and JP Bays, her husband. Cheyenne Bays got that $50,000 bonus the other week, and she collapsed when she found out about it, this whole fighter pay. So we're going to talk to her. But it's like a huge thing, and everyone's writing about it and talking about it. But Jake Paul's a big proponent of it, and what he's doing for boxing too, and adding people to his undercard and bringing up their name and recognition. Regardless of what you feel about him, he's putting more revenue in the right hands, and for that you have to respect that. There's no other way around that.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a tough subject for a UFC fighter maybe to bring up, but because he's outside of the system, he can kind of advocate on their behalf. And I know Sean O'Malley just said something, it was on the internet, and he's like, why can't you just pay people what they deserve? I'm like, I don't know. I run a business, and it's tricky. You pay the ones who perform better, more, and the new ones you got to kind of earn your spot. And Cheyenne Bays, man, that, I don't know if I said that right, but that was fucking perfect. Killer. I was so just moved by that, and all of us were watching that over and over, all over Twitter, and and I saw the fight. She fucking barely didn't get DQ'd from that kick.
I know. I saw the replay again last night. I was looking at it. It was literally by centimeters too. She had just lifted up. It's like, and I know she wasn't watching. It was more instinctual. If it was timed any other time, it could have been a DQ. I saw that too. It's funny because I don't think a lot of people have talked about that, but I think that was luck. I'm gonna ask her about that too. I'm gonna ask her about that.
Oh, that'd be a great question. I love that. And so, man, this is going great. Thank you so much for coming on. We still got a little bit of time, but I want to talk about a few things. Like, did you go to the University of Arizona? Or?
I did. I was an Arizona Wildcat.
Wildcats, and you got a degree in journalism-ish something.
I say journalism, but it was communication. Okay,
well, that's important.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's writing. It's much better than doing, accounting and the other stuff I was doing when I first enrolled and was in the business school. And I'm like, what am I doing this for? I want to write more. I want to do more broadcast stuff. So I made the transition.
But you had this. Maybe you were like most kids. Maybe didn't exactly know what you wanted to do, but did you?
I kind of did. It was always in sports. It was kind of a unique situation for me because I always thought I was going to law school to be a sports agent. But while I was doing that, I was always doing broadcasting. Like my senior year of high school, I went to a high school with like 6,000 kids. Wow. It was like going to a junior college. I would do these Friday morning announcements with my good friend. And we would always mess around and do shit. And everyone would laugh those Friday mornings when we would come on and we would do our thing before school started and everyone watched. I'm like, oh, this is fun. So then by the time I got to college, just for fun, I did University of Arizona TV. I auditioned for the sports role, but they gave me the main anchor news role. And I didn't really enjoy it because I wasn't sports and I'd do these research. Always these negative stories. It's like, 6 people died in Nogales, drug smuggling, shootings at the border, all that. I'm like, I have to do all this negative shit. And then my senior year, as I was studying for the LSAT to get into law school, I had auditioned for the Arizona Athletics. It's called Cat Nation, a pregame show. So I was hosting our basketball and our football teams pregame show. I was on the court. I was interviewing like Sean Miller, the coach at University of Arizona, some of the basketball players. And that's when I kind of realized my senior year, the epiphany is like, I don't want to go to law school. I want to get into sports broadcasting. So that's kind of how the journey really fully turned for me. So I've been kind of blessed to always kind of know what I've wanted to do. I just never knew exactly how I was going to get there because I saw the writing on the wall early that this industry was changing. In 2012, I was sending DVDs to all these like small markets, like the Shreveport, Louisiana's, Sioux Falls, wherever it was, to break in, to be a weekend news anchor, weekday sports reporter, because that was how you got in, and to see how everything transitioned and how all the twists and turns and the failures for me to get to this point and be completely independent and build it on my own. This industry started changing, and the old school, the dinosaurs, I like to call them, they didn't want to change with the times and still kind of are reluctant to change with the times. So I'm blessed to be in a situation where I could be an entrepreneur and create for myself.
That's beautiful. Failure is such a part of success, and, not getting those jobs in Sweetport, Indiana, or whatever, was a blessing ultimately, probably, maybe because you might still be there to this day doing the weather or something.
Yeah, you never know.
But I loved what you said about sport. You were doing the main headline news and it was so negative, and it is. And sports stories they're always pretty positive. I just thought of that. It's like there's not a connotation of negativity when it comes to sports news. It's someone won, some triumph, some overcoming adversity, and that's so just eye-opening in a weird way. Just you gravitated more towards that and away from what might have been a main anchor position, which is pretty prominent. You know, it's good, those pay well, and you could have just taken care of yourself in that regard, but you steered away from that. And sports isn't usually like the number one story, but you still wanted to be in part of that rather than in the main anchor, so that you could do what you loved, you know.
Sports are so important to me, and even Helen, my girlfriend, she's right now, she's training for the 2024 Olympics, 50 freestyle, and she was a child prodigy swimmer. Her parents from China, English as a second language, didn't even understand what a college scholarship was, and kind of forced her to quit swimming before she even peaked. She was junior Olympics. She could have been Olympic trials back then, and now getting back into it, you know, over a decade later. And for me, my whole dream was to be a professional athlete as a kid. And when I realized at 16 I wasn't going to be, you know, a professional basketball player, I figured the next best thing to do would be talking about it or representing the people that are playing it. I wanted to be involved with it because I think sports are such an important thing for everybody in life. Like, they teach you so much about life, how to win, lose, face adversity, build chemistry, team, everything. They teach leadership, so many
following
lessons, following, everything about yourself. So everything about sports I love in terms of just bringing it into everyday life, and that's why it's so important to me.
I wanted to be in the NBA too. I was on the high school basketball team. I made the freshman team after not making the middle school team like Jordan or something like that. But
you didn't make the varsity team. You made the team, but it wasn't varsity.
Oh, that's okay. Well, see, I didn't even make the team in middle school. And then the only way I made the team my freshman year is because they had an A and B freshman squad. Yeah. And if you didn't quit, you could be on the team. And they pushed us, like, people were throwing up in buckets and running suicides and all that stuff. And I just didn't quit. And I made the team. And then the next year, sophomore year, I made the sophomore team. Never made JV, never made varsity, but I actually made the sophomore team like of my own volition, you know, like there were cuts and I cried. It was so sweet. That was the pinnacle of my basketball career, was making the sophomore basketball team. But I wasn't tall enough. I used to hang from the rafters and try to, I mean, I don't know if that would have helped, even if I was 6'5", you know, there's a lot of 6'5" guys. You still got to be quick and agile and have some coordination. But I would like to play you one-on-one.
Well, hey, when I see you in person, let's play basketball. I love that. I love basketball. We could definitely do that.
Yeah, it's so meditative for me. I like to just go out on the court by myself sometimes and just, you know, shoot around.
Yeah. Well, when we see each other, we can definitely have a friendly game. I'm no problem with that.
I'm actually coming to Vegas in September. We're going to lock in the dates, but to hang with, well, do a photo shoot with Marino, Brandon, the baby Sasson.
Yes. We'll link up when you come in town in September. That sounds great. We'll do that.
Okay. Have you had a chance to kick it with him?
I haven't had a chance to kick it. Well, he's been on the podcast.
Yeah, I saw you with him. Yeah.
And I've interviewed him. Yeah, you know, like we haven't had dinner. Or I was there for his title celebration in Phoenix. I have kicked it with him a little bit. I can't sugarcoat it. I got to know him a little bit. He's such a great dude. He's a great dude.
I'm so happy for this division and the fact that we sponsor him and he won. I was like on fire because, you know, we've sponsored Cowboy and we've sponsored all these fighters who were, you know, trying to make it to the top, and time after time we kind of get a little bit of disappointment, you know, when they don't win. But when he won, and he wasn't really supposed to win, kind of, you know.
Right. I mean, the way Davidson Figueiredo was looking, it just looked like he was going to be there to stay for the long haul. And looking at the history of that division too, in the flyweights, like Demetrius Johnson and the long haul, and I know Henry Cejudo beat him, and they haven't had too many champions too, and just the people there hold and reign the title for long periods of time. A lot of people didn't see it coming, but you knew if Brandon Moreno was to upset him and beat him in this fight, man, he's got an entire country behind him, and he was going to explode, and that he did.
Yeah, and like the world, he's not even segmented or to just Mexico, like everyone loves him because he's so lovable.
Yeah.
And he's another testament of will, where he got cut from the UFC and worked his way back, and now he's a champion.
I don't know if there's ever been a UFC champion that was cut by the UFC and came back to win the championship. I don't know if he might be the first.
Well, I get to interview him. I'm gonna try to just have a conversation with him. I know he doesn't speak the best English, but it's pretty good.
No, it's good. I've had him on the podcast twice.
Okay.
So I've had 2 hours of just straight English talk with him. He's good. I mean, English is a second language, but compared to a lot of other people where English is a second language, he is far superior.
I'm hoping he reigns for quite some time, and just because everyone loves him, and he gets a lot like the Ngannou picture where Ngannou's kind of like putting his shoulder on his elbow on Brandon's head. He's just fun. I actually just got him a present, Brandon. I got him. He's probably not going to see this, but if you do, I got you a Lego set.
Amazing. He loves that. And he loves that. He's such a friendly guy, and you'll find this out too. He doesn't have right now a clear, definitive challenger at the flyweight division. It's kind of up for grabs. So who's going to be his first title defense? So hopefully by the time you get to him, you can pry that out of him, or it might just be released and we know something. But you'll be able to get some of his first initial thoughts on that. I think will be pretty cool.
I keep waiting for Cejudo to make a return.
So I have a really good relationship with Henry. He actually called me last night. He was shopping baby strollers. I don't think Cejudo returns unless it's for a huge name / huge payday. Like, I think it's got to be an Alexander Volkanovski so he can go for the featherweight strap. I think he would do that.
Quadruple C?
Quadruple C. C4. C4.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe Peter Yan in Russia intrigues him to an extent, but not as much as Volkanovski. I think what really is going to get him over the top is if he can take a fight that adds to his incredible legacy. It's got to be a legacy fight.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, I hope he just holds on to his legacy as it is now, which is great, and just ride off. Yeah, because and I'm like, if Khabib came back, and lost or whatever, it's just like I like when they walk away and as a winner. That's pretty sweet. Not enough people do that,
Yeah. And Khabib is that one type of guy where it's done. He's not going for 30-0. It's 29-0. He's coached Khabib, and I can't see him ever taking another fight that's really for the record. Maybe an exhibition for some charity work or some really good cause, and something where it's all fun and games, that the competition isn't really at where it's been at its height. But it's very, very rare to see that. Like Chad Mendes, we had brought him up earlier. He's coming back at 36, and he's not coming back to the UFC. He's coming back to fight bare knuckle. The itch never left.
Ooh, yeah, bare knuckle. I did just talk to Jason the Kid Knight, and he did bare knuckle, and he's debuting back in PFL, and he was a fucking savage, but like we were saying earlier, you have these ups and downs in the career, and he's back on his upswing, and it's all mental. I talked to him about that, and how do you stay, because what's so cool about fighting is like all that stuff translates into life and resilience and overcoming obstacles like we all do every day, if you think about it that way. But you are, trying to build a name for yourself. I'm sure you've had discouraging times in the past. Like, what do you do to stay positive and keep going? And
yeah, that's a great question. I've had a lot of failures to get to this point, and I'm still creating for a lot of failures each new week in order to build and grow and get back stronger. But the positive mindset, it's you got to enjoy the process and the journey, and have the mindset of when you feel like the world's stacked against you and you're not growing, you're feeling stagnant and you wish you could be there. sometimes I have to take myself back and think about, where were you this time last year? Where were you 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I know what it feels like to be rock bottom and to have no money and to be living with my brother and trying to just, eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and grind into to make my dream a reality. And I'm so fortunate to be in this position now and just to be grateful, and where I can be my own boss, pave my own way, cover the sports and the athletes that I want to cover, and not to report to anybody. And again, my whole goal in this is to be the best sports personality in the world. I just want to wake up every day, talk sports, and make people laugh. That's my premise. That's what I always have to remind myself, is wake up, talk sports, entertain. That's the goal. That's always the number one goal. So I guess my best thing to do is just to make sure that I exercise daily, 1 hour, sweat every single day. It doesn't matter if it's yoga, Pilates, strength and conditioning, plyometrics. It doesn't matter. Sweat every day, go for a hike, whatever it is. That's my calling. I love to get sun. That's why I love living in the Southwest, living here in Vegas, and I lived in Southern California before that. I grew up outside of Chicago, where only for 3 months of the year, like Memorial Day to Labor Day, was like the best place to live, I think, in the country, and I could argue the world. But after that, I wanted nothing to do with it. And just shoveling snow and scraping ice. I'm just so grateful, where I feel like being in the West, things are much more progressive, where I can be more free-spirited and take risks. I'm a risk taker, and I just like having the freedom to take risks, because if I fall, I know how to pick myself up twice as fast, and that's something that I'm not afraid of. You can't be afraid to fail.
Michael Jordan said, "I have failed, and I've failed, and I've failed, and that is why I succeed." Something like that.
It's your will to win should always outweigh your fear of failure, and I think will to succeed. And if you have that, if you have anything remotely like that, even if it's a 51-49% ratio, you're going to end up okay. Yeah,
that fear is a mindset, and I try to have an abundance mindset, and that whole attitude of gratitude you're just displaying is so prevalent in like the successful people I want to be like anyways, and in the books that I read and try to talk about on here, like Think and Grow Rich, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, you want to being positive is like one of the pillars, because shit's gonna get negative, and if you let it bring you down, you're more likely to quit and stuff like that. And if your will to win is greater than your fear of failure, that's where you're on the right side of the paradigm in your mind, because you don't want to live in fear. That's horrible to live in fear, and it's going to translate into like reality or something,
Yes.
You have, and visualization. I have all these pictures of guys go like this. They just won. Like I don't even know who that guy is. He won one of his fights, and I have like Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson. Just right after the win, that moment of glory and is that triumph. That's what I think we all want from time to time. And when I visualize myself and my team, I see us sort of like in a Bulls championship locker rooms, like champagne, laughing, crying. We won, we did it. Because like that's another part of success is like, what do you want out of it? Where are you going, and visualizing that moment of being there. I don't know if you visualize or do anything like that.
Yeah.
What's that like for you?
Yeah. Success is a progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And that's something that Earl Nightingale said in fireside chats in the 50s and 60s, and it's still prevalent today. So I visualize where I want to be, what it looks like, how I'm helping people. Like, what do I want my life to look like? I look at what I have now, and I just see it as a temporary state. I see it as progressively working towards a goal. So I wake up every single day with ambition, with hope, with opportunity to seize that moment, to seize the day. To who can I interview this week? Where can I travel to next week? And what can I do differently and better before? How can I continue to grow my brand? How can I improve numbers, visualize different ways? Like, sure, I've been able to maximize what I'm doing in the MMA community. How can I expand that to the NFL, to the NBA community? And so I'm always thinking about how to be better and what that looks like and where I want to be in the life that I want to live. And like, that's what keeps me going.
Beautiful. Yeah. A lot of people I think are just kind of stuck in the what is, but if you have to appreciate what is, be grateful for what you have now, but also that vision for the future is key. Otherwise you're like aimless and drifting.
But what you can agree to, because I know you have this too, it's anyone can have a dream, but what are you willing to do about it? How are you going to execute? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to be a dog? Are you willing to swim in the muck? Are you willing to put in all the work necessary to achieve your goal? And very few people I find are willing to put in the work. Anyone can talk. Anyone can say they want to do shit, but can you actually go out and execute and do it? That's where you find out what cloth people are cut from. That's how you separate, the men from the boys, or, from the thinkers and the doers, and that speaks for itself.
I love it. Yeah, I'm obsessed. It seems like you're obsessed, and you have to be obsessed to an extent to be a success. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming on the show today, the Robert Patton Global podcast. Thanks you. The fans will get a lot out of this. We try to talk about the mindset of a successful individual, and you just did that perfectly. I really appreciate it. It was fun, and I look forward to seeing you and playing that basketball game.
Of course. I'll see you in September, and just want to give a huge shout out to you, Robert, and your podcast. I love what you're doing. I love the business that you've created. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the most comfortable underwear that I know I've ever worn in my life and continue to wear. It is a game changer, and it's stylish, it's comfortable, and it's a great conversation piece.
It is, and you're welcome. And thank you again for coming on here. So everyone, we'll be back soon. We got a lot more podcasts coming, like faster and faster. So we'll be pumping them out more often. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. Peace.